All right, let me just start this by apologizing for not getting out a video about the Knicks loss on Sunday, and it's now Wednesday. I just moved into my new apartment. For whatever reason, we didn't have Wi-Fi for 3 days. So hence the reaction video when it's coming out now. And honestly, it was a blessing in disguise because it gave me the necessary time to sit back and respond rather than react to what we all witnessed, the massacre, the bludgeoning that we witnessed of the Knicks, the acts to end the Knicks season on Sunday. So it gave me the necessary time to just take a step back and really consider how I was feeling, why the Knicks lost the way they did, how it utterly disappointing it was. Because all those feelings that I initially felt at the start, they're still present within me. It's just not as pronounced. It's not as enunciated, and it's not as frustrating to be able to get that out. So I'm glad that happened. I'm glad the Wi-Fi completely screwed up, but we finally got it working, and we are going to sit here and discuss what we all witnessed on Sunday and how this Knicks team just completely changed every single mind of casual sports fans, of Knicks fans, of people who don't even really watch sports. The culture, the vibes within the Garden, within the Knicks organization are changed forever, at least in the near future. You know how sports organizations work. People come in, they come out. Once you build a culture, though, it is very hard to deviate from said culture until you lose one of your top players. So this Knicks organization is devoid of any of the controversy, the BS, everything that we've witnessed over the last 20 years. As long as Jalen Brunson is on the team and as long as Leon Rose is running the team. That is my biggest takeaway, that no matter what we witnessed, the matter in which they lost, the Knicks, you know for a fact, are going to give it their all time and time again, that no matter how the chips fall, no matter what ends up happening, these Knicks, because of their nucleus, because of the Villanova Big Three, because of the complementary pieces that they have, Deuce McBride under contract for the next 3 years, OG Anunoby, who's going to get re-signed, all of this combined sets up this perfect landscape to look at. This perfect painting that has been perfectly put together by Leon Rose of an organization that now equips competency, that now equips extremely smart people, the right personnel in terms of the coaching staff, from Tom Thibodeau on to Johnny Bryant, on to Jalen Brunson's dad, Rick Brunson. You know that you could trust these people no matter what they do. They made all the right necessary moves. They had to get rid of Emmanuel quickly, who a lot of people were not happy about. They were not happy about that move. I wasn't happy about the move, but look how it worked out. Even with OG Anunoby's injury history, he is the X factor on this team. And it's just the same with what the Timberwolves did last year with giving Jaden McDaniels this massive $27 million a year deal. And now look where they are. So the Knicks have all the necessary pieces. They have everything put together in the correct order, in the correct spots. The puzzle is put together. I was not of this belief before the playoffs. I was under the impression the Knicks needed to go out and make another move to be in the upper echelon of NBA teams. As I'm sweating my ass off in the city on a summer day, my AC's pumping. Apologies if you can hear that. This Knicks organization has been able to quell any of the qualms or the QU words that I'm using today. Wow, this is crazy. They've been able to quell any of that the rhetoric that this team is not equipped to win a championship, that they don't have the pieces put together to win. I'm here to tell you right now, they absolutely do. Without a shadow of a doubt, the Knicks, as they currently stand, and it remains to be seen what they do with Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency. It remains to be seen how much they sign, because it's going to happen, how much they re-sign OG Anunoby for. And there are a few other guys on this roster that aren't guaranteed for next year. Alec Burks being one of them. I wouldn't bring him back. That's another story for another day. We'll get into that at some point. But They are currently constructed well enough to compete for a championship. Say what you want about Julius Randle, and I'm going to get into him in a little bit, but say what you want about him. The fact that the Knicks were able to advance past the 76ers, and say what you want about Joel Embiid, who wasn't at 100%. I don't care. No one on the Knicks was 100%. They advanced past the 76ers, should have won in 5. They won in 6. They beat them. Okay, great. Now you've got the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers have depth, they have speed, and they have the defensive pieces in the middle to stop the Knicks. And that's exactly what they did. And you got to tip your cap to the Indiana Pacers. As much as I'm not rooting for them to win this series against the Boston Celtics, and great that they lost last night, you got to give them credit because they made the most with what they were given. It wasn't their fault. You know, you can't knock them for winning a series in which a lot of players were injured. They won the series. Knicks would have done the same. And enough with the excuses. Enough with, the Knicks were healthy. We get it. We understand the Knicks. Yes, if the Knicks were healthy, they would have won that series handedly. They would have crushed the 76ers. They probably would have swept them. And I think they would have swept the Indiana Pacers. If you have Julius Randle, if you have Mitchell Robinson, if you have a healthy OG Anunoby, if you have Bojan Bogdanovic, but they didn't. And the conclusion that you could take away from all of that is this team does not give up. They have that clutch gene. They have that winning mentality that can take them from where they are, where they finished the last 2 years at the end of the second round of the playoffs, into that next level. When you look at Boston right now, and objectively, this has been the talking point by everyone out there who watches the NBA, who doesn't watch the NBA. Everyone knows the Celtics were the best team in the NBA this year. Have you watched this series? And yes, they're missing Kristaps Porzingis, but Al Horford's still a really solid player in the league at his old age. He's the oldest player in the playoffs. They are absolutely beatable. Yes, they are extremely well put together. They have on paper the best roster in the NBA, on paper the best roster since the Golden State Warriors teams of 2017, 2018, and 2019. And again, without a shadow of a doubt, the Knicks crushed them. If the Knicks are healthy right now in the Eastern Conference Finals, they were up 1-0, and they won that first game by 25 points. I will die on that hill. And we can all take a step back and be appreciative and find a positive in all of this. And that positive is the Knicks have the assets. They have the picks. They have the favorable contracts for other teams to make that move for a superstar. But they don't need to make it. Like, yes, you want to get rid of these draft picks. They have the 24th and 25th picks in the draft, 23rd and 24th. They have back-to-back picks in the mid-20s. Are either one of those guys going to play a single minute next year? I doubt that. Especially if the Knicks bring back every guy that was on the roster this year. There's no way that either one of those guys plays. But again, you have to have trust in Leon Rose. You have to have trust in Worldwide West. You have to have trust in Tom Thibodeau and the scouts of the Knicks to make the right decision. To do what's right with those picks, with those assets that they currently have on the books. You have to trust them because they've given you every single reason to. And in 2024, it took a while to get to this point. If you are a diehard Knicks fan like myself, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you watching this are, then you know how disappointing, how sad, how disgraceful it has felt, and it has been, to watch your team continuously falter, short of expectations, but short of all of the NBA norms. This isn't the Detroit Pistons that we're talking about. And now they're a dumpster fire, and I'm sure Detroit Pistons fans feel the exact same way the Knicks fans felt, but the Pistons had success in the mid-2000s. The last time the Knicks had real success was the early, almost at 1700s, the early 1970s. The teams of Willis Reed, Clyde Frazier, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, and so on. The Knicks have built the nucleus. They've built the core. And when you look around the NBA, especially this year with the 4 remaining teams, there was no one player dominant enough like Michael Jordan was in the 1990s, like LeBron James was in the early 2010s when the Knicks were good. They were good. They weren't as good as they were in the 90s. But when you look at the landscape of the NBA, there's just a lot more parity in all this. There isn't one team. There isn't one organization that does it better than any other team. And you just always have to factor in injuries because those happen. And you can take it from us, Knicks fans, to understand that. Where this team is at, with Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and Jalen Brunson, is a spot that any other team in the NBA would love to be at. Simply put, real talk. Any one of these teams in the NBA would absolutely sign up tomorrow if it meant you get those three. And I understand, yes, teams are in better situations, but for their value that they have right now attached to them, for Dante DiVincenzo being on the mid-level exception the next 3 years, for Josh Hart being on a deal in which he probably deserves a lot more money than he's getting right now, and then with Jalen Brunson, who not only has the contract to back up the team friendly and the great leadership and every one of the qualities he possesses, but now he's got this will to win that is going to propel the Knicks to the next level, because it has been reported recently that Jalen Brunson is willing to take the extension that can be offered him this summer, which is around 4 years, $155 million, as compared to what it would be next year, which is 5 years, $270 million. He's going to take less money to help this team win. He's going to be under contract for the next, I want to say it would be 6 years. Jalen Brunson would be under contract for. You have a 6-year window at that point. A wide open 6-year window with all the picks, with all the assets, with all the players on your team that you need to possess to win a championship. That's where the Knicks are at right now. They are currently in a spot where they should, and I say should, not could, should make an NBA Finals. And now it brings me to the next part of this, in all of this. It's Julius Randle. And a lot has been said specifically by the mainstream media about Julius Randle, and say what you want about all the anti-Knicks bias that you see with these mainstream media heads. The anti-Randle bias is about 150 times worse. That the fact that I saw people out there on Twitter saying that Mikal Bridges, I understand Mikal Bridges is younger than Julius Randle. How many All-NBAs has Mikal Bridges earned? How many All-Star appearances has Mikal Bridges earned? And the excuses should have been done the second he was traded to the Brooklyn Nets, and it became evidently clear that he is nowhere near a top 2 talent on a championship team. He's a 3 at best, a 4 ideally. So you're telling me that Julius Randle, who is a proven number 2 on a really good championship, again, the Knicks remains to be seen, knock on wood. Who knows what the Knicks are going to do with Julius Randle in the first place? But the Julius Randle disrespect has to stop. And there's no world in which, at this point, after what we saw with the Knicks in the playoffs, that Mikal Bridges has a lot more trade value than Julius Randle. I'll give you the slight edge with Mikal Bridges. But the fact that it's so evidently clear that you can't understand why Knicks fans are saying that Julius Randle shouldn't be traded straight up for Mikal Bridges is asinine. I don't get it. I really don't understand. And I'm sure a lot of people out there, as you could correctly surmise, are just putting out stuff that they know is going to get Knicks fans extremely upset. Because the Knicks fans make up probably the second largest population of fans among different teams. The Lakers obviously are number 1. Like, they take the cake. It's the Lakers. We get it. They won, they have 17 championships or whatever. The Knicks fans take up that second group. And it's easy to pick on the Knicks. It's easy to say, oh, but the Knicks haven't done anything. The Knicks haven't, because they haven't, objectively. It's all fair criticism up until the point when it becomes personal for one of those guys. And I think that one guy is Julius Randle. It was Jalen Brunson earlier on the year. He proved the doubters wrong. And now it's Julius Randle's time to shine next year. And Julius Randle coming up on the last year of his deal. It remains to be seen what the Knicks want to do with him, whether or not they want to package him for another star, depending on who's out there. But if I'm the Knicks, I run it back. I see what I have. I see where my team is at. I look back on January of this year, 14-2, beating the Nuggets by 40, beating the Timberwolves, dominating some of the best teams in the NBA, showing no signs of slowing down. Yes, they had a bad game built in there, here and there. They lost 2 games. Of course they did. But when watching that stretch of basketball, it was by far the best I've ever seen the Knicks play in my entire life. And we all took it for granted because we're like, oh, wait, this team is really good, right? This team could go far. And then Julius Randle goes down with the injury. I'm watching it and I'm live saying it's over. You can't lose a guy like that again. And say what you want about Julius Randle and his inability to perform in the playoffs these last, 2 of the last 3 years, not including this year, of course, because he was injured. Fair. I get it. I understand if you want to criticize him for that, for especially last year, because you look back on 2020, 2021, you got to cut the guy some slack. He was the only real offensive option on that team. Alec Burks, Derrick Rose, Elfrid Payton, RJ Barrett, who was just he actually played pretty well, and he did step up both playoffs. But Julius Randle, and this is another thing that I'm really upset about that still has not sat well with me. And I'm sure I'd share this sentiment with a lot of other Knicks fans, that I was really excited to see Julius Randle get a chance to prove the doubters wrong in this playoff run. Because everyone knew the Knicks were making the playoffs, especially after watching how they played after they traded for OG Anunoby. It was almost a formality. And it was almost like, all right, well, where will they end up? And they still ended up in the 2 seed, even without Julius Randle, which I think is just such an impressive feat. And is such an indication of Jalen Brunson's skills, his leadership ability, and also just shows you how good he could be with Julius Randle on the court, or another great offensive option, because down the stretch of this playoff run, Brunson had no one. He really had no one. He had nowhere to look. DiVincenzo, as great as a three-point shooter as he is, there is nothing like a 6'9", 250-pound Julius Randle barreling down full steam ahead towards the basket. And the opportunities that creates. And there's a reason why Julius Randle has averaged more than 5 assists a year in these past few years. There's a reason why he looked like a much more under control finisher and facilitator this year, because he completely changed his game. And Julius Randle was playing some of the best basketball of his career before he got hurt. So enough with the Julius Randle disrespect. Enough with the anti-Julius sentiment in the media. It's easy to pick on him. It's easy to say Julius Randle's not good enough. That Julius Randle needs to improve at this. He needs to improve at that. He spins into double teams too much. These are casual takes by casual watchers of the NBA. These people have no idea what they're talking about. Zero idea. And no matter what happens to Julius Randle, and again, I outlined every reason why I want Julius Randle back, why I want them to run it back. But no matter what ends up happening with Julius Randle, no matter what the front office decides to do with him, he deserves all of your respect. And this playoff run should have proved exactly why the Knicks are a better team with Julius Randle on the court. Say what you want about the metrics, these metrics that all these big diehard NBA fans want to pull up, these anti-Randle people. You look at the metrics, the Knicks are look at the metrics of that January run, the 14-2 run. Look at the metrics of that starting lineup. Brunson, DiVincenzo, Anunoby, Randle, Hartenstein. Look at those metrics and then come back to me. And then tell me this Knicks team was better off without Julius Randle in the playoffs. I don't want to hear it. It's enough. And I had to stick up for Julius Randle because it's asinine hearing constantly the disrespect towards Randle. And that's the one major thing that has lingered with me throughout this playoffs, especially since they lost on Sunday. They had nothing. Their entire team was injured. No wonder they lost. And you knew the second Jalen Brunson, obviously, when he fractured his hand, it was over. Even if the Knicks somehow pulled out that game, they don't stand a chance against Boston without Jalen Brunson, and without Julius Randle, and without Mitchell Robinson. And here's the other thing about that January run, that run in which they went 14-2. They didn't have Mitchell Robinson. They didn't have Mitchell Robinson. So Josh Hart was the backup four. They didn't have the size that they will have with all of those front court players. Fingers crossed the Knicks re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein. It looks like they will, but who knows? Some team might come in and offer him over $20 million a year, and he might take that because that's how the NBA works. Most guys just want the most money that they can get. But the culture that Julius, that Jalen had built, the camaraderie between Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein, it should be enough for Hartenstein to want to come back to the Knicks. Imagine saying that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that a player on the Knicks took less money to sign with the Knicks because they really wanted to be on the team. We're in a completely new day and age for the New York Knicks. That is my main takeaway. And going forward, yes, it's important to take it all in, to digest what happened, to let everything marinate with you, however you want to go about that. But it's also important to snap out of it and get to the point where you could look at this team objectively, where you could sit back and have a positive outlook on this team, which you couldn't have had last year because it looked like the East got a lot better over the offseason. There wasn't really anything to point at where like, oh, the Knicks really have this. RJ Barrett's improvement has been that good. Somehow the Knicks are going to find a way to pay Emmanuel quickly. Like the way they handled that, the way they navigated it, they may have given up too much for OG Anunoby and with his injury histories, but the Knicks are better off because of it. And they're in a better spot now in this offseason than they were last year, objectively. So that main positive takeaway, the main up in lights, the main big sign, the marquee of this Knicks organization, they're here to win. They are ready to win. And you can have full trust in this organization and in this front office to bring it home for us. And I think it's important to start looking at winning a championship, holding the Larry O'Brien trophy as a real possibility. If the Knicks don't win a championship in the next 5 years, honestly, I'd be surprised. Crazy that I'm saying that. Unbelievable that I have to sit here, that I am sitting here in the year 2024, finally saying that. Either way, it just doesn't roll off the tongue. The Knicks are championship contenders. The Knicks should win the championship in the next 5 years, but it's true, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind the Knicks are in a position to win. There's no doubt in any of your minds too, because you all watch those games. I digress. That's enough. That's all I got for today. More Knicks content, more NBA content, more Yankee stuff now. You could always check out what I'm talking about when it comes to the Giants on my Giants podcast, One Giant Step with Sean Morash of WFAN. I'm going to be getting into some hockey because I'm currently locked into the Rangers. I'm not a hockey fan. I've never been a big hockey guy. If you know me, you understand that I root for just all the New York teams if they're in it, even the Islanders if they're in it, but especially the Devils and the Rangers. I know that that's frowned upon if you're a huge hockey fan, but I may be a Rangers fan at this point that roots for the Devils on the side because that's just how it works. That's how I am. I'm a Yankee fan, but I root for the Mets on the side. I am a Giants fan, but I root for the Jets on the side. People hate that. I don't care. That's just who I am. A lot of family members, a lot of people that were fans of certain teams, and I have a soft spot for some of them. I'm locked into the Rangers. Let's go Rangers. Hopefully one of these teams could bring a championship back to New York, but it starts with the Rangers. So LGR, let's go Rangers. I'm going to have maybe a guest or two lined up for that. But until then, until either later this week or next week, happy Memorial Day.